So,
But yeah, but they need to hear this one more time. If you're 14 or 15 years old living with your mom and dad and it's a healthy environment, right? So let's wish that on you first, not my environment. If you hustle now and you learn a skill and you do all of that, you could be financially free by 25. But here's the deal. And I say this as a person who lived through it. I was making more money than my parents before I was 25. And I was spending money like it was water,
yeah.
right? If you don't do that and you keep your expenses low, you could be financially free, never have to work for the man again before you're 30.
All right, guys, today on the channel, we have the amazing Michael Zuber from the YouTube channel, One Rental at a Time, as you can see in his background, as you can see in my backgrounds. I have his book. He has a book. You should definitely check it out. It's on Amazon. He has so graciously offered to come and be interviewed on my small-time YouTube channel again, and impart with us some information that I think is going to be really valuable to you. So if you're thinking about clicking out, just do it. But if you do, you're missing out on an opportunity to hear somebody explain how to get started if you're young, poor, or broke. And this is not going to be a, hey, you can make $1,000 a day with 3 hours of work. No, it's going to be a story about truth, which is you got to work hard, dedication, motivation, and hopefully that will move you in. So anyways, Mike, go ahead and say hi.
Hey, Mike, how are you? Thanks for
Man,
having me.
I'm doing good. And see, I was clever enough this time to not interview you immediately after you interviewed me. So that way I could get you back another day and pick your brain a little bit more.
I see. I see. Smart man.
So what I wanted to talk about today was exactly this. On my YouTube channel, I get a lot of young people. I've had the youngest person who's commented on one of my videos was an 11-year-old girl. And I'm
Wow.
reading through the comment, and she's like, yeah, I'm looking at your video on your second rental. Looks like you're probably going to get about a 30% return on your cash. And I'm reading through that whole comment, and I'm like, wow, this person's doing some good math. And at the bottom, they say, but don't take what I'm saying too seriously, because I'm just 11. And I said, 11? What? So there's a decent amount of people on my channel who actually want advice for how to get started when they're young, when they don't even have a job yet. So
Yeah.
this video is for young people, 14 to 20, and hopefully for anybody else who's also interested.
Okay.
But what I want to ask you first is a little bit about who you were when you were a kid. So tell me about like the first job you ever had.
Wow. So we're going to go back to 12 years old. So I've had a job until I was 45. So let's be clear. I had at least one job from the age of 12 to the age of 45. There were many, many times I had multiple jobs. So at 12 years old, at least when I was 12, which back in the early 80s, you were not supposed to work, right? You couldn't get a worker's permit until you were 13. So I was 12. My family was in a situation in the 80s where my father was laid off and laid off for months after months, and my mom never worked. She was a stay-at-home mom. So we had no money. And it really came down to somebody's got to put food in the refrigerator. So I found a friend who had a dry cleaner, and I worked at the dry cleaner under the table doing probably the most disgusting hard work I've ever done, sort of pressing those shirts and pants. And I'm sure there was horrible chemicals and all of that stuff. But I worked at a dry cleaners in the evenings and Sundays for like 12 hours. So I did about 25 hours of work under the table while I was 12.
Wow.
Then when I turned 13, I got a worker's permit so I could work fast food job. I
Okay.
think it was like $2.85 or $2.90 an hour minimum wage then. And I still worked in the dry cleaner. I think it was just Sunday at that time because I still had to go to school, right? I was still in 7th or 8th grade. So, I've been working to put food in the refrigerator for a long time. So I was just selling hours. My life really changed is when I was introduced to commission-based sales. So I was about 15 years old. I had a friend at the time that worked at Sears and Roebuck, which was a thing back then. They don't really exist anymore, but
Yeah.
I was invited to work in their hardware department, where if you know the hardware department, they used to sell Craftsman tools.
Yep. Good call.
And in hardware, you could make 1% for everything you sold. And then if you sold some high-end stuff, you could make 3%,
Okay.
right? Which, and I got an hourly salary. So I was just flabbergasted. And I remember seeing my first commission check because I had no idea, right? Nobody in my family was in sales. Everybody in my family was just totally hourly worker, just didn't get it, right?
Right.
You were happy to get overtime, right? That was what my family was excited about. But I was like, commission. And then you go into your first Christmas. And I remember my first $1,000 check, and we were paid weekly, right? It was
Okay.
1,000 gross. So it was like six something net or whatever it was. And I was like, oh my God, that's $1,000. And of course I was always good with numbers. I'm like, that's 50 grand a year. That's more than my dad makes. And I'm like 16 years old at the time. I'm like, holy cow, I figured it out.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was introduced to commission sales very early, and it was very clear that the more you knew, the more you hustled, the more you knew about your product, the more you sold, right? You could sit at the register and wait for people to come to you, or you get on your butt and go out. And on slow days, I would wait outside and offer to direct people, right? And then if they wanted to go to hardware, I would walk them in and take care of them, right? But if they wanted to go to, children's shoes or whatever, I would just say, okay, great, go here, take a left. So I did that all the way through high school as my main job. Probably made between 20 and 30 grand a year on commission. So the wealthiest I've ever been was my senior year in high school, when I made like 35 grand.
Wow.
As a high school student.
Whoa. That's amazing right there.
Yeah. So again, what I would tell young people is I believe commission-based sales, it's hard because even back then, I was always a month away from being fired because they had these things called maintenance agreements. And if you didn't sell a certain percentage of them, they could put you on plan. And then if you missed again, they would sell you. And people were coming in and out and in and out. Right. And I did that for 10 or 11 years and always had that pressure. And then you also get rewards, right? If you're the best person in the department, the CEO or the vice president of the store would take everybody to dinner once a quarter. And that was a big thing. And cool. Here I am, a 16-year-old kid, going to dinner with a bunch of 40 and 50-year-olds. And I'm like, wow, they're ordering wine and drinks and stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is cool.
Nice.
Yeah. So commission-based sales was a big deal.
So obviously, sales jobs, a lot of people know that sales can be very lucrative. I actually just met with a kid yesterday who's been on my YouTube channel. He's 22 years old. I call him a kid. I guess I probably shouldn't. He wants to become a police officer like me. And he was working with real estate. He was working in real estate, as he has his real estate license, and he was working with someone else who's already established, and they're the ones, and he just kind of helps him with the paperwork and showings. Yeah. And he told me he couldn't do it anymore because there's too much dishonesty, there's too much negativity, there's too much saying I'll get something done when they know they can't, lying and stuff like that. Now, I'm not obviously saying not all sales jobs are like that, but what would you say to somebody who says, I can't be a salesperson because I'm not either good with people or I'm afraid of the dishonesty that I may be pressured into?
Well, the question comes down to is what's your motivation? So let's just have an honest conversation. When I walked into that sales job, I was very likely one of the most introverted person you would ever meet.
Really?
I mean, I wouldn't talk to people. You couldn't get me. I would probably go days without saying 50 words.
Wow. I
mean, I was just very introverted. I was small. I wasn't, I didn't come from anything. I always felt like the world was behind me, and the only way to survive my family was not to be seen, right? Because
really
there was alcohol involved, and it was, if you got seen, you could get hammered.
Right.
So I would blend in and disappear. Mm-hmm. But when you realize that money comes from effort and money comes from helping people, you either put up or shut up. So you have to figure out what's important to you. And it was more important to me to get uncomfortable and just to figure it out and try. That's the big thing about sales. You just got to try. And again, you'd be amazed how much I probably made 10 or 20 grand sitting at the front door going, hi, how you doing? Welcome to Sears. Where would you like to go today? Oh, you want to go to shoes? That's that way and take a left. And I mean, I would talk to 30 people before I'd find someone that wants hardware. And then I would just walk them in, right? I mean, it's just, how hard do you want to work? And then the other one about being dishonest, that's your circle. One of the things you learn throughout your life is your network is important. And unfortunately, there's going to be times in your life, and I still go through it today, where your circle is going to change. Mm-hmm. You're going to either outgrow your circle, or you're going to find out that someone in your circle is poison, or a battery, it weakens the battery. People go through life in different stages. And I can only think of one friend that I have now that I had in my mid-20s. That I still consider a friend today. Mm-hmm. It's a part of life. And I will cut people out if they're dishonest, and I'll just go somewhere else. So talking about real estate, yeah, there's a lot of bad actors. And I would tell you there's a lot more bad actors when it's hot than when it's not. But it's your job to always hold yourself accountable. And if the people around you are no good, go somewhere else. There are lots of places you can hang your shingle.
Right.
And I promise you, there are many, many, many good places to go. You just happen to find maybe someone around you that is taking advantage of you, and they want to take your hours as a 22-year-old. They don't want to pay you what you're worth because they think they could, because they have more experience or some other nonsense. If somebody did that to me, I wouldn't accept it. I'd go somewhere else probably pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good point to make. In every field, there's going to be those bad actors who look to take advantage of other people. I mean, people on my channel know what I do for a living. I'm not allowed to just come right out and give all of my political opinions because of what I do for a living. But there are bad people that do certain jobs, and the good people are actually more needed in those industries to hopefully stamp out that bad behavior and take a stand for it. Now, it's difficult when you're that 22-year-old kid or that
Yeah.
brand new hire, but you just have to be ready for that kind of stuff. And I think really the theme that I'm getting from you that I want to impart to like these young kids who watch the Alex Becker ads, who watch all of these. If you give me 30 seconds, I'm going to show you how you can make $1,000 with very little work. That's not how real life works. If you listen to Mike's story here, right, from the age of 12, he worked more hours than probably a lot of adults do and figured out any way he could to be better. And that's really what it takes to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
Let me go ahead and move into another section here. Okay, so that's a little bit about how you were before high school. So then what? I know you went to college,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ended up getting a degree. I don't know what the degree was in, so I'll let you tell me that. And then you eventually moved on to be a salesperson for an electronics company or a software company. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first and foremost, getting a college degree in my family was unheard of. I was the first one. I mean, it's embarrassing to say. I'm talking all the way back, grandparents, cousins. I mean, everyone. I was the first person to get a college degree, and the first person with a college degree and a master's degree. And frankly, as of today, I'm the only one with
Wow.
a college degree and a master's degree. So that just tells you, I affectionately call most of my family white trash. I mean, that's just where I grew up in, and
Right.
and that environment can really destroy you, right? I mean, just think about what I told you earlier, right? My whole life, at least through the age of 18, is when I left home, was to try to hide and not be seen, because if I got seen, I'd get smacked,
Right.
right? That's just horrible. So I went to college, and why did I go to college? Because I saw college as a way to differentiate myself, and I paid for it. I paid for my college,
Okay.
right? I
No
took
debt?
on debt.
Oh, you
No,
did
well, I
take on
took
debt?
on debt. Well, I did. I went to junior college because, again, I'm paying for it,
Right.
right? I have a decent job coming out of high school, making 30 some $1,000s a year. So I go to junior college. I think it was like $8 a unit or $12 a unit, so it was relatively cheap. But then after 2 years, I transferred to Santa Clara University, which is an expensive local school.
Mm-hmm.
And again, remember, I'm working 40 hours a week, taking a full course load as a 20-year-old, and I'm married,
Okay.
right? Just think about all that, right? So I just keep going, right? I just lean forward. College was going to be my differentiator. I come out of college with a degree in economics from Santa Clara University. I get an accounting degree, or get an accounting job. I remember about 6 months into that job. I was ballsy, man. I walked into the CFO's office, who I had never spoken with, right? I'd seen him,
Mm-hmm.
and he always had this, open door policy and come
Right.
see me anytime. So his door was open.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I walked in at 20 or 21. And I, pleasantries, blah, blah, blah. Michael Zuber, I report to so-and-so. And he's like, who is that? I'm like, well, that's this person is like 5 layers below him. He's like, well, okay. Well, what do you know? And I simply asked her, I still remember, just, this is so stupid. I said, what do I have to do to get your job?
Oh.
He looked at me like his mouth just went,
The guts on this guy.
yeah, well, whoa. He goes, first and foremost, you got to learn respect, know your place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay. And he goes, after that, you need to go get an MBA. I'm like, okay. Nobody ever told me that. I didn't even know what an MBA was, right? Remember where I came from, right? White
Yeah.
trash, right?
Yeah.
So I thought a college degree was my golden ticket. Now this guy's talking about more schooling. What the hell? So I ended up doing that. At the time, I could get a loan for my work to cover the cost of getting a master's degree. So I did that. So my master's degree was essentially paid for by my employer. But again, I'm working full time. I still have a part-time job at Sears,
Mm-hmm.
right? 40 hours a week at Quantum, which was a disk drive manufacturer. I worked weekends at Sears, Saturday and Sunday, and I'm going to school getting my MBA.
Mm.
Right? I am hustling, and I am married. Right, so um, that's what I did. And then ultimately, a relationship in my master's program introduced me to a software company who wanted my financial background and ability to understand the technology, and invited me to go to a startup. So I took a risk. I was probably 22 at the time. I was employed 13 at a startup.
Wow.
Yeah. And they brought me in as a consultant. So I would sell hours and, um, sell hours while they developed the software. And that's how I got into software. And then I was a consultant. Then I went to pre-sales and sales management. Why did I make all that change? One simple reason. I wanted the money.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Accounting paid only, get this, my accounting job was only slightly more than I made at Sears in high school.
That's sad. It's either
Yeah.
impressive for your high school or sad for the accounting.
But it's sad. Well, that's why I had to keep the Sears job, because I had to make some more money, right? Because again, it's just who I was. I couldn't slow down. But then I went and got that consulting job. My salary almost doubled. It just did. And then I got into pre-sales. And again, when I got out of consulting, I was brought into pre-sales and was put in commission.
Mm.
I'm like, now I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Right. So in software sales, you have this thing that's called a split, like 60, 40, 50, 50. Basically, they give you this big number, call it 200 just for easy math. But in reality, they only pay you 50% of that. So 100 grand.
Mm.
And if you perform, you can earn the other 100.
Okay.
And get this, if you do really well, you can blow it out. There are people that in my profession that make 7 figures a year because
Wow.
they are that good. So if you blow it out, you could make really good money. So I survived in that environment for 20 years on a 50-50 plan.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's important for everybody to realize is I lived on my base, right? So I
Right.
lived on that 100,
Mm-hmm.
and I banked everything else.
Right.
Because again, don't earn more and spend more. If you're listening to this and you're young, the best thing you have going for you is you can live on ramen noodles.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
If you can live on $2,000 a month, you are so close to financial freedom. It's amazing.
Mm.
But if your monthly nut is like 15 grand, you've got a long road to hoe, right? So again, if I was 14 to 25 right now, I would do everything humanly possible to reduce my monthly expense. Because again, if I can get by with 2 to 2,500,
Mm-hmm.
you can literally be financially free in 5 years or less. You got to bust your ass. You got to make that money during the day. You got to stop spending. You got to invest in assets to produce cash flow. But if your goal is to be financially free and you listen to folks like us that say, keep your expenses low,
Mm-hmm.
you can be financially free by 30. You
Right.
would kick my ass by 15 years. I was done at 45. You will make me look like a slow freaking turtle. Seriously. I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I would keep my expenses. If I could keep my expenses like where I was at 24, which were probably 6 or 7 grand. Remember, I live in the Silicon Valley, so there's some housing variability there.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I could have been retired at 37 or 38.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I got cocky and bought the expensive car, and I've spent, I got a belt in my closet that was a freaking $1,000. Who needs a $1,000 belt? Yeah, it's just stupid stuff.
My gun
Yeah.
belt doesn't even cost that much.
Yeah.
And it's done on a government contract, so they always buy stupid pricey stuff. Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
what I'm
was-
kind of
yeah,
hoping for because, I'm hoping to hit maybe 37, 38 that I can be financially free. But then I see these 14-year-old kids commenting on my YouTube videos, and I'm like, dude, you guys will be done at 25
Easy.
if you just stick to it. So
But they need to hear this one more time. If you're 14 or 15 years old living with your mom and dad and it's a healthy environment, right? So let's wish that on you first, not my environment. If you hustle now and you learn a skill and you do all of that, you could be financially free by 25. But here's the deal. And I say this as a person who lived through it. I was making more money than my parents before I was 25. And I was spending money like it was water.
right.
That was fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't do that and you keep your expenses low, you could be financially free, never have to work for the man again before you're 30. I would call that life great success. And then you could do whatever you want. It takes hustle, drive, sacrifice, consistency. But if you individually can keep that expenses low, life I mean, you're buying 70 years of greatness,
Freedom.
freedom, man. That's exactly the word I was looking for. You buy 70 years of freedom, and if you do that, I want to shake your hand because you make this old man very happy.
Do you have to go to college?
No, you do not have to go to college.
There's
Absolutely
other
not.
alternatives out there where you can be
Yeah,
successful. It's
yeah.
probably more important to just not overspend income as you get it and instead
Mhm.
stay small versus focusing on one thing
Yeah.
like college.
There are very few jobs that require a college degree, and we know them all. If you have a passion to be a doctor, guess what? You're
Yeah.
going to college. You're going
Yeah.
to be a lawyer, guess what? You're going to college.
Hmm.
But getting a sociology degree or an arts degree or an econ degree,
Yeah.
no. I mean, I have a master's degree from a university that where the education was over six figures, right? Just for the master's degree.
Right.
And
Jeez.
I don't use any of that today, very little. But I did create a relationship that did branch my, future. So that one relationship was worth
Hmm.
a bunch of money, but you do not need to go to college, right?
Right.
And you should. The gap years definitely right now. The gap year is a thing, right? Why pay all this money to go to college when they're going to just take you to Zoom classes?
Right. Yeah.
Go find your passion.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
Oh
You
man.
do not need to go to college.
Um. Okay. So why the next question I would have is why should somebody choose real estate investing? So for those who don't know, if you're at this point in
Mhm.
the interview, Mike Zuber here has, when I last chatted with you, you had like 170 units. I'm sure that's fluctuated a little bit because you're a big guy
Mhm.
and you sell and buy, but you're an
Mhm.
extremely successful real estate investor who has had the opportunity to first retire your wife based off of your
Yep.
passive income and then retire you.
Mhm.
So, to the kid who's watching this, who's also getting smacked in the face with, you should be doing day trading, which I know you can
Ah,
speak about, and you should
oh,
be doing drop shipping, and you should be doing the YTA method on YouTube, and you should be doing Instagram pages to try to make money. For all of these other fancy things that are out there, maybe you don't know about all of them, but why
mhm.
should somebody pick real estate investing?
Well, first and foremost, thank you for that. Real estate investing is something that's been around for several hundred years. It is often hyped. It is often marketed as get rich quick. It goes in cycles. One of the things that you should take away from my story, one rental at a time and investing in California, is I have now danced through the raindrops. If you watch your market every day, you can get out at the peak and in at the bottom. And the only reason I was able to replace two six-figure incomes was because I was selling at the top and buying at the bottom and building a portfolio now that's closer to 180 or so units. And it's you can get leverage, you can have inflation be your friend. It doesn't take any extra work. People always it's water, food, shelter,
Hmm.
right? That's the order. All these other things that people are coming up with these silly ads for, um, they may work for a minute, but then they're going to be inundated and then they're going to not.
Hmm.
And most of the people out there doing these ads, their job is not what they're selling. They're salespeople.
Right, right.
They're one step away from being what used to be called the people selling the magic elixirs. You know,
Snake oil salesman?
yes, that's what I was going for. They're one level away from snake oil salesman,
Yeah.
and don't believe it.
Yeah, that's the frustrating thing. I see all these people who are selling, hey, do you want to learn how to make money day trading? It's like if you made so much money day trading,
You
then
wouldn't
why
be
aren't you
doing it.
day trading? Why are you instead selling a course on day trading? It doesn't make any sense to me. All right, so that's good because I think people, there's a lot of confusion out there for the younger people. Most of the older people who watch my channel watch your channel, dude. They're already sold on real estate. They
Mhm.
know, they get that it is the proven thing that stands the test of time, and you'll be successful. That it just takes time. These young people are getting inundated with everything because they're susceptible.